Hey there, welcome back to Pepper Geek. In today's video, I'll be showing you our delicious pineapple jalapeno salsa. Salsa is one of my favorite snacks, especially midsummer when you can pick everything fresh out of the garden. And today's iteration of salsa is made up of almost entirely ingredients that we can grow here in New England, with the exception, of course, of the pineapple. But if you're growing things like peaches or nectarines or even plums or apples, you could substitute those sweet ingredients for the pineapple. The ingredients are pretty basic for a salsa, with the exception of one ingredient, which we'll get to, which is sort of a secret ingredient in our recipe that I think really makes the flavors pop. We also have a sort of special way of preparing the tomato, which in my opinion sort of improves the texture of the salsa, but it is optional. But like any great salsa recipe, you pretty much just dice up the ingredients and throw them together and get snacking. So let's start with the ingredients. First is one medium-sized tomato. I weighed this, it's around 9 ounces in case you want an exact measurement. A half of a small onion, or about 4 ounces of onion. One jalapeno, you could use 2, and I'm gonna actually be using secret ingredient serrano here. I like a little bit of extra heat, so we'll be doing 1 jalapeno and 1 serrano pepper. A half a cup of fresh diced pineapple. Make sure you get a really ripe pineapple. Pineapples are really in season right now, and we've been eating a lot of them, so it's perfect time for us to be making this salsa. In our experience, it's best if you start to see some yellowing, and it's a little bit soft when you squeeze the pineapple, but you don't want it to go mushing around, and you don't want to see any rot forming on the outside. A few sprigs of fresh cilantro. Not everyone likes cilantro. I personally do. I came around on cilantro, but if you don't like it, you can leave it out. I tasted it without cilantro and it's still delicious. Now for the secret ingredient, this is pasilla. This is the dried form of the chilaca pepper. It's a Mexican chili pepper with a little bit of heat, but mostly it's used for its delicious flavor. It actually got its name from its aroma, which is very similar to raisins. So pasas means raisins, and so pasilla. You can get these online, or you can find them in some grocery stores. Just make sure that they are sort of bendable. You want them to have some pliability left. That's the perfect form. You don't want them to go exploding when you try to bend them in half. One alternative, which may be easier to find in your location, are ancho chilies. These are the dried poblano peppers. They have a very similar aroma, sort of like raisins as well. So we'll be using a teaspoon of ground up pasilla, a half a teaspoon of salt, and 1 tablespoon of white vinegar. So with all the ingredients, let's get started preparing the salsa. Let's start with the tomato. So I like a pretty finely diced tomato. I'm just gonna remove the stem here and slice it in half crosswise. And this is optional, but I like to remove all of the seeds and sort of the juicy innards just into a food processor and just pulse that up really well and sort of emulsify it. That adds some good texture and flavor back to the salsa, but it's optional. You can just dice the tomato up from here. So you can sort of just squeeze the tomato like so and sort of go around in circles, and you'll see that all that gelatinous goopiness comes out no problem. And most of the seeds will come out as well. And what you're left with is this, which is basically just the flesh and the skin of the tomato. So I'll do that with the other half as well. Kind of satisfying to do this. You get a little messy. I think it's worth it, but again, optional. You don't have to get this messy if you don't want. You can just dice up your tomato like you normally would. So it's very watery, and you can just pulse it up. And then for the actual tomato, I like to go pretty fine with my dicing. It's just maybe about between 1/8 and 1/4 of an inch cubes. I like a more chunky salsa. Some people will just blend up the tomato and make it really, really fine, but I don't like it that mushy. I like to have little pieces of tomato. So, into a bowl with the tomato. And I will say, tomato and the pineapple are probably the 2 ingredients that you want to be freshest. You know, grow your own tomatoes and get pineapple at the peak of ripeness. That's really important to make this salsa as delicious as possible. Now for the pineapple, just cut a pineapple as you normally would. I'm just going to use about 1/4 of it, but just enough for about a half a cup of pineapple. So cut away any brown bits if you see anything that looks like it might be going rotten. And then again, finely diced. You want this to get onto a tortilla chip just perfectly. So nice snackable size pieces of pineapple. Heading into the bowl next. Now I have whole pasilla, which is how you can get them online, but you can also find them in powdered form. So I'm gonna use about half of one pepper and just kind of rip it in half. And then I'll use my spice grinder or a coffee grinder to grind it up into a pretty fine powder. Whew. So there it is, the pasilla ground up. It's so aromatic in here. I hope that you'll actually try this. It really does make a difference in the salsa. So I'm just gonna add that in. Half the onion, finely diced again. I like using sweet white onions, but you could use a yellow onion or even a red onion if that's your thing. Fresh onion, heading in. Woo. Hot peppers, you can go as hot as you want. You could use a habanero here if you want, but I do think that the flavor of jalapeno and the heat level is kind of perfect for everyone. And of course, if you want a little bit of less heat, you can remove that placenta. That's where all of the heat is. And you can remove the seeds as well if you don't want that texture, but I leave it all in. And serrano, finely diced. Now that half teaspoon of salt, I'm just using sea salt. Add those tomato juices back in. So a few sprigs of cilantro. Again, you can omit this ingredient if you don't like cilantro, but I think it's pretty important. Tastes great to me, just adds that sort of freshness, but some people find it to be soapy. We use about a tablespoon or so of the fresh cilantro leaves. And lastly, 1 tablespoon of white vinegar. It may not seem like enough, but with the juices from a really juicy red tomato, you really don't need much more liquid. And with the acidity of the pineapple, you really don't need much more acidity either. So 1 tablespoon I found to be just perfect. So with all the ingredients together in a bowl, all that's left to do is mix it all together really well. Get all of that salt, all of those tomato juices covering every ingredient. You want everything really, really well mixed. And what you end up with is just the perfect consistency, just super, super chunky and wet. I like it kind of watery. I like to be able to dig a chip in and sort of saturate it just a little bit and allow all those flavors to sort of ride on that liquid. So the salsa is pretty much done. I would recommend chilling it for an hour or so if you like your salsa cold like I do. Just makes it feel more fresh, but I'm definitely gonna taste some right now. And of course, some chips I will be sharing. So let's find the perfect tasting chip. Cheers. Super refreshing, the perfect balance of sweetness and saltiness and tanginess and fruitiness. Oh, it's just so good. If you like sweeter, sort of more fruity salsas, I think you're really gonna love this. We also have a printable version of this recipe if you wanna save it. And if you do try it, leave us a review on our website. The link to the recipe is down in the description. Let us know what you think. Leave a star rating on Pepper Geek. We'd really appreciate your feedback. Let us know your favorite ingredients to use in salsa. We're always experimenting with new salsas every year, so please let us know in the comments below. Be sure to check out our other recipes like our simple 6-ingredient habanero hot sauce and pickled jalapeno peppers. Thanks for watching Pepper Geek, and I'll see you next time. I think I might just sit here all day.